All right, let's move on to Premier Smith. Doug Ford was here for Stampede. Boy, I bet you he's just munching his way through some pancake breakfast and then some barbecues in the evening. Eating his way through the Stampede. He was here to announce that they've reached an agreement to pursue pipelines and pathways to export Canadian energy and natural resources across the country and around the world. That's great. But what happens when we run up against Quebec? Anyway.
Today marks an important step forward in uniting our country as Alberta joins forces with Ontario to pursue our shared goals of economic growth, opportunity, and prosperity. We're signing 2 memorandums of understanding that will see us advance pipelines and pathways to boost exports of homegrown energy and critical minerals to markets across Canada and across the world, and work collaboratively to support both Ontario's automotive industry as well as Alberta's liquor manufacturing industry, industries that contribute substantially to our provincial economies. The first of these agreements formalizes our commitment to working together to maximize the economic value of Canada's energy resources and enhance Canada's energy security and global competitiveness. We're uniting with Ontario to amplify our voices and double down on our efforts to carve a path forward together for Alberta, for Ontario, and for Canada. Through this agreement, we'll work together to explore ways to improve networks and corridors that better connect our energy and critical minerals to markets here at home, as well as international markets around the globe. We'll focus on supporting industry efforts to build oil and gas pipelines and refining, processing, and supply chains for energy and critical minerals between Alberta and Ontario. We'll work towards accelerating our exports across industries. And that means we're seeking to add more rail lines to increase capacity and enhance access to ports, including to sites in James Bay and Southern Ontario. And we will share expertise to advance development of nuclear energy solutions so our provinces can keep up with the ever-growing demand on Alberta and Ontario's electricity grids. We know there's strength in taking a united front, but we cannot achieve our shared provincial goals without cooperation from the federal government. It's vital that the federal government gets fully on board with creating the conditions necessary to strengthen Canada's economy and competitiveness, improve investor confidence, and grow productivity. Ottawa must answer our calls and remove all federal barriers that have harmed Canada's ability to grow the energy sector and other industries such as mining and manufacturing. And this includes, but is not limited to, repealing or amending the Impact Assessment Act and the oil tanker ban. We're also working to repeal the net zero power regulations and the proposed oil and gas production cap. We also call on the federal government to repeal their electric vehicle mandate that comes into effect next year. Last year, only 4.2% of the cars sold in Alberta were zero-emission vehicles. And the federal government's EV mandate says that 20% of cars sold in 2026 must be zero emissions vehicles. We buy about 200,000 cars, so that would be about 40,000 cars. So we would have to buy nearly every single zero emission vehicle manufactured in Ontario last year to hit the 20% target. And we're just one province. So removing federal barriers will allow Alberta and Ontario to attract investment and project partners we need to get shovels in the ground, grow industries, and create jobs. I'm excited to continue collaborating with Ontario so we can reach our share.
I think that's good. Did you see Doug Ford visibly gulp and then start to sway when she talked about repealing the EV mandates? Because he's been the recipient of a lot of EV mandate welfare in his province.
You know, Sheila, I thought that was the only visible clip in that little clip where he was, it seemed to me he was nodding in the affirmative.
He went like this. You can see it.
Oh, he was repelling?
I just saw him have like a big gulp and then sort of, because, you know, he is the guy that to buy off Ontario and earn their support, he's been the recipient of billions and billions of dollars in electric vehicle manufacturing bailouts. And now those companies are going broke here and abroad.
100%. I believe the Stellantis EV plant in Windsor last week announced major layoffs. I think you're right, Sheila, your prediction. These EV battery plants are going to end up as giant white elephant casinos in the future. This is a fantasy, this 2035 goal of not allowing new fossil fuel vehicles to be sold in Canada, the idea that they have to be full EV or plug-in hybrids. It is not going to happen looking at market share, looking at the price of these vehicles, unless you want to bring in Chinese EVs. Do you know, Sheila, there are several companies in China. If our viewers are interested, get the recent issue of Motor Trend magazine that are building all kinds of EV vehicles at incredibly cheap prices. That's because their EV industry is heavily subsidized by the Chinese government. And basically, you don't think China is paying the kind of wage unionized automakers have here. So is that the solution? And if that is the solution, so much for elbows up, protecting Canadian jobs. Because you know, Sheila, when you're looking at EVs and plug-in hybrids, they're way more than an average fossil fuel combustion vehicle. But one last thing on this point, I know precisely where Danielle Smith stands on these issues, but where does Doug Ford stand, Sheila? I mean, and is he having an identity crisis? Because I saw a photo, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe someone will reach out and say, Menzies, you're a dummy. Don't you know an AI-generated photo when you see it? But I saw a photo, I think, of Doug Ford at Fraulein Freeland's backyard barbecue. He had the biggest smile on his face. It looked like he just had his second helping of cherry cheesecake. Anyway, the point is, who does Doug Ford support right now? Is it, I think we have the video, the photograph. Sheila, is this real? Fraulein Freeland and other assorted senior liberals at this barbecue, and there is Doug Ford with a huge smile on his face. What team is Doug Ford playing for right now?
Team Ford.
Yeah.
That's it. I think that his only ideology is power. You know, I watched that Rob Ford documentary on Netflix in preparation for an interview that I did with Anyways, I was filling in for Ezra, and right, thank you, Olivia. Her name completely escaped me. It just entered my brain and then went out the other side. I was prepping for an interview with Sue Ann Levy because I was filling in for Ezra while he was on the cruise. So I thought, as much as I hate this, I'm already a Netflix subscriber. I'm just going to watch this stupid thing. And yeah, they didn't round up very many people who actually liked Rob Ford in that documentary. But I will tell you that Doug Ford's hate of the media and his love for his brother was on full display. And now he's just fully embraced the same leftist media and the same leftist politicians who eviscerated poor Rob while he was still alive. I don't understand it.
Sheila, the biggest mistake I made, and I would suggest millions of Ontarians made, was that Rob Ford and Doug Ford are two peas in a pod. They're just the same. That has been proven 100% false. And I go back to, I think it's one of the greatest political slogans crafted in our young century, which was Rob Ford's respect for taxpayers. What we were just talking about a few seconds ago of Doug Ford contributing tens of billions of dollars for EV battery plants shows the disrespect for tax dollars. We've seen him flip-flopping on numerous items, going back to 2018, stopping the radicalized McGuinty-Wynne sex ed curriculum. It is more radicalized today than it ever has been. Doug Ford is a closet liberal, and he is increasingly coming out of the closet, I would suggest.
I think he only cares about power and being in power, and he'll do whatever it takes to do that. That's why he aligned himself with the Liberals during the campaign. That's why he called an early election for himself, striking while the iron's hot. And now he sees how popular Premier Smith is, and so he's trying to align himself with her as he sees the Liberals their prospects fading. So the guy is just a snake.
And you know, Sheila, I'll tell you when I get super nervous, The moment I hear of Doug Ford taking French lessons, I think once again, I'll have to put an exit strategy on my to-do list for Canada, because there are all kinds of rumors that he covets being the new leader of the Conservatives. And I wouldn't put it past him to attempt such a thing, Sheila.
Yeah, I mean, that'll be your problem once Alberta's gone. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that's true.
We've got one more clip from these guys, and then we've got Alexa coming up after that. So let's see how tight we can keep this. Smith and Ford speak on the importance of not relying on Donald Trump's America and building up Canada's energy infrastructure. Let's listen to this. By the way, that denim outfit she has on is quite lovely. I love the embroidery on it. Anyways.
Do you know what, Sheila? I'm so glad you mentioned that. I was going to mention it, but I didn't want to sound like I was sexist.
It's gorgeous.
Something about a lady in that kind of a cowgirl outfit, to me, it screams wholesomeness. She looks like such a sweet, wholesome lady. I don't know what it is, the cowboy hat and the embroidery on the denim. That's what it gives to me. I love that look.
Okay, let's hear it.
On the pipelines front, I'm curious what your actual plan is there. There's not necessarily a whole lot of love for oil pipelines necessarily heading east. So what can we expect in terms of concrete, where it might start, where it might go?
Well, first of all, I'd say we have done lots of polling on the attitude towards pipelines. And in every single province, it's a majority, and in some cases, well above 70%. And I don't think Ontario is any different. Ontario, I think, knows that with Line 5 right now, it goes through Michigan to feed Sarnia, and that puts them in a precarious position. The governor of Michigan has been trying to shut that pipeline down for years. And so we have always felt that having a made in Canada solution with the pipeline option going to not only Ontario and Quebec, it just makes sense from an energy security point of view. And the world changed in November. And I think Canadians understand that we've got to start acting like a country. We've got to start supporting each other. And I think that is the prevailing sentiment in the country. But I'll let Premier Ford speak for his own people.
Well, thank you, Premier Smith. Premier Smith was bang on. We have the governor of Michigan constantly threatening to close down the pipeline. Do you know the disaster that would create in Ontario? It would basically shut down Pearson International Airport, largest airport in the country. Prices would go through the roof. I'm tired of relying on the United States. And let's make no mistake about it. I love the U.S. I love the American people. But there's one person that's causing a problem right now, and that's President Trump. We want to move forward. We want to build the AMCAN fortress. But the days of relying on the United States 100%, they're done. They're gone. We're going to start being reliant and self-reliant on each other. We have the strongest. We're an economic powerhouse in Canada.
Okay,
we're going to continue growing.
I think that's enough. I've heard enough of his nonsense. I'm not hard of remembering. He's the guy who said turn off the pipeline to the United States.
With a smile on his face.
And Danielle Smith said, excuse me, that means that we're turning off the pipeline to you, because the pipeline line 5, line 9, they go through the United States to get to you. And so now all of a sudden he's like, oh, like they're always threatening to turn the pipeline off. And it's like, you threatened to cause a blackout in upstate New York. Like, what's wrong with you?
You're so right, Sheila. It's almost as though Doug Ford right now is channeling Bob Hope, back in the day when he said, when you're in Chicago, you give him the Windy City stuff. When you're in New York, you give him the Big Apple stuff. Yep. As though we're not paying attention. And one last point on this before we go to Alexa. Would Toronto Pearson International being shut down, would that be a bad thing necessarily? It is the worst airport in the world.
Yeah, and I'm
including third world airports in that, Sheila. It's always misery. That is the factory of misery in the GTA. So I don't think that's a big loss. If I have to travel to Buffalo to fly out, so be it.
Yeah, he's I think Danielle must have shown him a map and said, okay, here's where the pipelines go to. So now do you realize why it's a bad idea? And then he gets in front of it and it's like, they're always threatening to turn off the pipeline. And you guys were pressuring Danielle Smith to turn off the pipeline until she told you that you would be choking yourself out too.